Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. All vehicles owned by central and state governments, including the buses owned by transport corporations and public sector undertakings that are older than 15 years will be deregistered and scrapped starting the 1st of April. This has been announced by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways through a notification. The rules, however, shall not apply to the special purpose vehicles, which include armoured and other specialised vehicles used for operational purposes for the defence of the country and also for the maintenance of law and order and internal security. Now, as per the notification, disposal of such vehicles should be ensured through the registered vehicle scrapping facility after the expiry of the 15 years from the date of initial registration of the vehicle. Announced in the Union Budget of 2021-22, the policy provides for fitness tests after 20 years for personal vehicles, while commercial vehicles will require it after 15 years. Also, states and union territories will provide up to 25% tax rebate on road tax for vehicles that are purchased after scrapping the older ones. To understand more about the policy and its implementation, I'm joined by three distinguished guests on the program. Delighted to have with me in the studio Mr. Ganpathy Subramaniam. He's a senior journalist. And joining us virtually is Mr. Mahmood Ahmad. He's Additional Secretary Transport, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. And Mr. P.K. Banerjee, he is Executive Director, Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the program. Let me begin the program today with you, Mr. Subramaniam. Your thoughts on this much-awaited policy. Do you think this is the great Indian auto revamp that India has been waiting for to move rapidly towards a greener future?
On the face of it, very good policy, as you explained, but it has already been delayed. Implementation was supposed to happen much earlier. We are yet to start, and then the start is very slow. You have very few scrapping centers. Right now, all the scrapping, 90% of it is happening in a haphazard way.
Yes.
And it is very hazardous for the environment also. The benefit of recycling is on one side, but if you are recycling in a hazardous way, it could create more harm than doing any benefit. Also, we are at a very crucial juncture of shifting from hydrocarbon fuels to electric vehicles. So therefore, the policy at this juncture is very good. But how many states are going to really give rebates and incentives?
Right.
Because when it comes to their packets, the state governments are very stingy. In return, they may ask for some other concession or benefit from the central government. So there are multiple things to be worked out. Policy is very good. How is it going to be implemented? How are the state governments going to provide incentives? How is the central government going to provide incentives for doing the same? I am ready to scrap my vehicle, but what will I get in return for doing it? There is no incentive that is very clear right now in terms of implementation. Also, how the policy is going to work, how the vehicles will be taken for scrap, and who is going to provide the certificate for it with which the owner of the vehicle is going to benefit, etc. are multiple questions that need to be answered. And very important, heavy commercial vehicles. That starts only next week. They are considered to be the most polluting vehicles in many parts of the country. So that question needs to be answered. And also, good part, very positive part is that state transport corporation buses are also going to be subject to this regulation. Many of them have very poor track record. So therefore, that is a very good beginning. But only when we come to the heavy commercial vehicles and do it successfully, then we will make real good gains.
Right. So the key lies in the implementation, Mr. Ahmad. Lots of questions there raised by Mr. Subramaniam. I'll come and ask all of these aspects from you one by one. The most important being, as someone who wants to scrap a vehicle, I need to go to a scrapping facility which needs to be abundant in number. At the moment, how many scrapping facilities do we have countrywide? What is our larger aim? Because if we want this procedure to be seamless and to be done in a non-haphazard manner, we have to ensure that these centers are there at every nook and corner.
I think both you and Mr. Subramaniam have made very kind comments as far as the policy is concerned. I and the ministry really appreciate that. What needs to be placed in perspective are the following. Number one, as Mr. Subramaniam very rightly mentioned, this was the need of the hour, not only today, but for the past few years.
Yes.
And this ministry has made a beginning, has put its best foot forward, has come out with a policy which is called the Vehicle Fleet Modernization Policy, in colloquially called as the Vehicle Scrapping Policy. We have notified the rules for this. There are two twin pillars in as far as this policy is concerned. One is the automated testing stations, the other is the registered vehicle scrapping centers. Again, as very rightly mentioned, the scrapping that happens in our country as of now is largely or entirely almost in the informal sector.
Yes.
This leads to various problems. Least of that, or most of it is not only in terms of environmental hazards, but also leads to very many other issues. The government has tried to encapsulate in its policy the benefits that will accrue to the country as a large. And let me start with the environment point here itself. The scrapping itself will be done in a scientific manner, in an eco-friendly manner, and for these there are very clear specifications that we have set out in our rules and policy. Now you came to the numbers. Yes, the numbers are less, but we have made a beginning, and as I speak, we have 9 registered vehicle scrapping centers functional as I speak. There are 10 more which have been which are almost on the verge of completing their construction. We are looking at possibly around 75 registered vehicle scrapping facilities across the country. We don't, although you did mention about a 150-kilometer radius per center, which is absolutely correct, but we need to look at the hubs, the vehicle hubs. So we are looking at Delhi NCR, we're looking at the western part of the country, Gujarat, Maharashtra, we are looking at Tamil Nadu, Bangalore, etc. So in the next coming few months, we expect that a large number of registered vehicle scrapping facilities are going to come up here. Now, what needs to be remembered is that the union government has taken a lead. It has taken the first step forward, but the implementation of the policy hinges upon the involvement of the states and their willing collaboration in this effort. Ultimately, a lot of these subjects fall in the state list,
right,
some of them being in the concurrent list. We need the states to partner with us, and of course the general public here. We are in constant touch with the state governments, be it at a ministerial level, be it at the highest levels of secretary, and in fact the entire ministry has had regular meetings, reviews, follow-ups. There are a whole host of issues which are to be taken care of, rightly said by Mr. Subramaniam, all of which we are seized of. We have the Niti Aayog also guiding us in this path, forward. And of course, the associations like Mr. Banerjee is representing SIAM here. We have consulted all the stakeholders, and we have to take each of them forward in this huge endeavor, which will ultimately, in the next coming years, will yield really good results for the country and for the economy.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it, and what's important here is that Mr. Banerjee, it needs to be a coordinated effort. As Mr. Ahmad was saying, there are multiple stakeholders involved and everyone has to work together. The question now is, why should the onus of incentivizing only lie on the center and the states? Or because the auto industry plays an important role here, it's an important stakeholder, what kind of incentives can we expect from the auto industry?
Auto industry has been waiting for this very, very important initiative since the first auto fuel policy was released by Dr. Mashelkar in 2002, when actually NCR Delhi had a challenge of pollution. Since then, out of the 32 recommendation, one of the recommendation was vehicle scrappage and fleet modernization. Auto industry have been patiently waiting, and we are very thankful to the present government that they have taken a very, very consultative and very comprehensive steps to define multiple regulations. It started with Niti Aayog, Steel Ministry, CPCB, Ministry of Road Transport, all of them sitting together and forming up number of regulations, not only in CMVR, but also with regards to the Water Act, Air Act, and local state, departments, pollution control board related guidelines. So we are in a democratic setup, the life of the vehicle defining as a mandate was not possible. Therefore, the first step was 15-year and 20-year, and subsequently, of course, in Delhi, it happened NGT order where 10-year-old, diesel vehicles and 15-year-old vehicle had to be mandatory, taken off and deregistered. But as an auto industry, we believe, as I think Joint Secretary, Additional Secretary Mr. Mahmood explained very nicely, beautifully, that what are the advantages. We believe that scrapping the vehicles will spur the manufacturing activity. Scrapping the vehicle will improve the environment. Scrapping the vehicle will improve the fuel efficiency. Scrapping the vehicle will improve the road safety. So I think it's in the interest of everyone. And if it is done in a very structured way, and Mayapuri activities, which was happening in a haphazard manner, has been brought into some kind of order with the CPCB guidelines, and we are trying to take everybody along with us in terms of material collectors versus recyclers versus auto OEMs. So we are very happy and delighted that this should happen. But as you know, that we have a tendency that out of the say 250,000 vehicles which were deregistered in Delhi because of the NGT order, how many of them actually went to the scrappage center? So we have a scrappage center from Mahindra Sero, we have a scrappage center for Maruti, Toyota Tucson scrappage center, and we have a multiple 3-4 scrappage center, but they are struggling with the feed because obviously the reasons are known that the feed is not reaching to the scrappage center because perhaps the owner doesn't see incentivized enough. So therefore, the second question which you are talking about, that what kind of incentivization we can create. So there have been some issues of a tradable certificate destruction can be used for the purchase of the new vehicle, where you will have certain set of road tax exemptions, or maybe some kind of discounting will be available. But if you look at the worldwide global way of promoting scrappage, cash to clunker scheme has to be brought in. Without that, I don't think common vehicle owners would be interested to go through this route so easily. Nonetheless, we all are actually consultatively discussing and interactively trying to arrive at some mechanisms. So, for example, recently this mandate of Government of India that 15-year-old all government vehicles will be scrapped. So, therefore, what should be the kind of reserve price for the expression of interest? So, those kind of things are being currently discussed, and I'm sure that we'll find some ways and means wherein we will create allurement and attraction enough for the customers that they will be, encouraged and motivated to scrap their vehicles.
Right. That's something that we will expect the center and the states to figure out, as the policy is implemented. But Mr. Banerjee, the question is, are the manufacturers willing to provide some kind of rebate to people if they, scrap the older vehicle and they go with the certificate to buy a new one? Is that kind of willingness there from the auto manufacturers in the country?
See, there have always been, continuous interactions with the Government of India, but we, being a society of, automotive manufacturers, we are barred from the Competition Commission's, a mandate that we cannot discuss the pricing and discounting as such. But nonetheless, we have facilitated that it's a bilateral matter, because you understand that percentage discounting on a two-wheeler versus percentage discounting on a truck or bus as a totally different ball game, and that too versus personal vehicle or taxi. So therefore, we have requested government that definitely auto industry is willing to be in touch with government and find out the best way forward for the interest of encouraging vehicle scrappage in the country, which is benefit for society at large.
So let's hope there's some positive outcome to that bilateral talk that you're, undertaking with the government. But Mr. Ahmad, coming back to you, one concern that has, come up with regard to this policy is that why take the years into account? Why scrap vehicles who have completed 15 years? Why not take into account the kilometer run? So perhaps maybe there have been concerns that vehicles would be 15 years, but their run on the road has been relatively less. And that should also be taken into consideration. Is that something that's been worked out? Is that even being considered?
In fact, it has already been considered. It's a very good point. The number of years, Teena, applies only for the government vehicles. In fact, our larger policy, which applies to all categories of vehicles across the country, talks of only fitness as the prerequisite for deciding whether a vehicle needs to be scrapped or not. If you recollect, I had mentioned in my initial comments that we have twin pillars in as far as this policy is concerned. The first being the automated testing stations. So how will it function? It is this way, that the vehicles after a certain period or after having run a certain number of kilometers, or if the vehicle owner so desires, he or she can take his or her vehicle to the automated testing stations. And when the testing station, certifies the vehicle as fit, the vehicle will be back to ply on the roads. But if it does not, there are provisions by which the vehicle owner can always appeal to the authority and apply for a retest, or can also undertake small maintenance measures so as to address those issues under which the vehicle was declared unfit in the first place, and go back and have the testing again. And supposing that after a couple of attempts the vehicle is still declared unfit, nothing to do with kilometers and nothing to do with the number of years, just the fitness of the vehicle will be tested based on a scientific methodology, based on all latest equipments that we have mandated should be available at all these testing centers, will then proceed towards a scrapping center to get scrapped. So
Right.
that's one. I also needed to mention, we have been speaking about incentives, concessions, etc. The Ministry of Finance has taken the lead again and has extended its scheme of state support. So all the states will get a certain amount of incentive if they undertake, an activity in this regard. So if they give the numbers, if they issue the notification, if they extend some sort of the concession in motor vehicle taxes, then the Ministry of Finance, that's it, from the Government of India, is going to extend based on certain slabs to each of the state governments a certain amount of incentive. Also, I must say that a number of state governments have also taken the lead. I can recollect offhand, maybe at least 10, 12 of the states have gone ahead and declared their MV tax concession policy, which is a big step forward. What that will mean is this, that when the vehicle owner scraps his or her vehicle, along with the certificate of deposit that he or she will be given, can then proceed to the showroom and can purchase a new vehicle on which registration, when it is to be carried out, will entail a certain amount of concession. So all these schemes have to work together, have to gel together. We are trying to set all this in place. It's a jigsaw puzzle. We are struggling with some of them, no doubt, but we have moved forward with a lot of them, and a lot of activity has happened, especially in the past few months.
Right.
As I mentioned, Niti Aayog has been guiding us all throughout. Finance Ministry has come out with various notifications and extending this scheme. And of course, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, we have ensured that the 9 RVSFs which are currently operational, or the 10 which are going to come up, have an immediate feed, which is from the government vehicles. That is wherein we only mentioned that let's have a number of years as cutoff. And I must also add here that a large percentage of these government vehicles are located in Delhi NCR. And we have done a mapping. The NCR area, Delhi NCR area, and a couple of places in the west of the country and southern part of the country, 80% of the government vehicles will have within a 150 kilometer radius RVSF center where they can take their vehicles and get it scrapped. So things are falling in place, and the future is very bright.
Okay, so you've spoken about the infrastructure for scrapping. The focus clearly has been also on the special assistance to states. But Mr. Subramaniam, coming back to the aspect of how the states are looking at it, they will be impacted by the decision majorly. As Mr. Ahmad was saying, bulk of these transport vehicles are within Delhi NCR. So the response that it will generate, number one, from the city-state government, and the kind of impact it will have on the budget also going forward. They might say that, if we have to remove these vehicles, we want more assistance from the center perhaps to, replace the older fleet. And the other challenge is also in ensuring coordination with other states and union territories also. That seems to be the core of the problem. In a lot of other, aspects also, wherein they fall in the concurrent list, we see that lack of coordination somewhere impacts the implementation. So to ensure that it does not happen, especially in this case, how do we ensure the seamless procedure?
There is a slightly unrelated aspect which is very important in this kind of focus. One, we are seeing that the central government is very keenly encouraging states to follow uniform kind of registration, licensing procedures. That will be very important for a policy like this to fall into place. Mr. Ahmad explained very beautifully the blueprint, how it's going to work, etc. And like you said, the cooperation from industry and states are going to be equally important, the other stakeholder being the public and the people who utilize the vehicles. So when we are moving to say electric vehicles, for example, the state governments have to make sure that the incentives that are given for electric vehicles are separate from the incentives that are going to be given for the scrappage. So that will be for the customer, it will be a big incentive. And the industry should also come forward to provide discounts because this is going to be a big booster for them.
Right.
For example, last year, the vehicle sales were quite flat, not a very encouraging sign after 2 years of COVID. So therefore, if at all they provide benefits, then probably more people are going to go for scrapping of their vehicles, and this is going to boost the business of all the automobile companies. In turn, the tax revenue earned by state governments as well as the central government will also improve. So therefore, it is not just somebody giving away something or the automobile manufacturer giving an incentive to the customer. This is going to be working in a way like a booster for the industry also and bring order into the entire system. So therefore, the 5% discount, no registration fee, some scrap value to be given to the customer, and rebate on road tax. There are many such suggestions are there to encourage more people
the
to come
union
forward.
minister at the recently held Auto Expo was heard saying that he is in discussion with the finance ministry to offer some kind of incentives for voluntary scrapping. Do you expect the finance minister to actually go that way, because this is clearly the future?
Of course, the question that you asked and Mr. Ahmad explained, it's not the mileage or it's not the age, it's the fitness of the vehicle. Somebody can ruin a vehicle in 2 years. So if in that case, it should be sent for scrapping. And that fellow will be encouraged to do it provided he has an incentive. And large number of these old vehicles are in states like Delhi, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc. So therefore, these are the areas where automobile manufacturers are also located close by. So there will be a correlation in the benefit and it will be a win-win situation for everybody.
Mr. Ahmad, and this is a larger question about the coordination now between the center and the states. There are several challenges and several concerns which have been raised to ensure that, this coordination happens without any kind of tussle or without any kind of, war of words, which we often see, especially when there are, governments of differing parties. The question now is, you have one rule in place, but you need all states and union territories on board. What is the response? And this had been one awaited policy. It's not that you've just announced it overnight. What is the response that you've seen from all states, all union territories on working together, on making it a success?
Actually, very encouraging. If one understands the challenges that are implicit in this entire process and this, grounding this policy, one will realize and one will appreciate the obstacles that one needs to, cross to be able to, transform it into a reality. I must say here that our Honorable Minister of Road Transport and Highways, Shri Nitin Gadkari, and our Secretary, Shri Alka Upadhyay ma'am, have been leading this from the front, and it has helped us in bridging whatever gaps might have arisen between the union and the state governments here. As far as I see it, there has been no tussle. There has been no. You mentioned war of words. It's been very sweet, very polite amongst all of us. And it's not that it has remained only on paper, that it's been nice words have been exchanged. We are seeing, actual transformation on the ground. As I speak, as I mentioned, 10, 12 states have already come up with their MV tax concession policy. Mm-hmm. In fact, the incentive scheme that the, Department of Expenditure, Ministry of Finance has announced, and they have set certain milestones. It's not very easily achieved. But for the state government, within a time frame of hardly a month or so, I can see Assam, which has completed all the formalities. But there are state governments which belong to other parties, like you mentioned, Odisha, for instance, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and couple of others who are in this process of completing the necessary requirements or prerequisites to be able to achieve milestone 1 and take the first installment of this incentive. And I'm sure once they scrap the government vehicles, they will be, entitled for the remaining part of the scheme. So personally, I understand the challenges. I do understand also that there is a certain kind of, eagerness and at times impatience at all levels. including mine and within the ministry, for things to move faster. But we do have to understand it's a democratic setup that we live in. Ours is a federal setup. The powers of the union and state governments, flow from the constitution, and keeping in mind the powers that flow to each entity, the sensitivities that are involved. I'm actually very pleased that we are making good progress. However, we can do much better. We can move much faster because time is of the essence, like for any policy or for the success of any policy. Mr. Subramaniam mentioned very nicely that it's a win-win solution for everybody. That is the kind of message we are seeking to send across.
That's right. That's
be
right.
it the central government, be it the state governments, or even the public at large. Of course, the auto companies. It will help everybody. Whether it's we are going to see an uptick in the number of increased sales in the vehicles, whether we are going to see a reduction in the emissions because newer vehicles will adhere to the latest emission norms. They will obviously be that much less polluting. Newer vehicles will have much more safety features. They will that much be more safer on the roads, both for the occupants as well as for the travelers on the road. So multiple benefits, win-win for everybody. We have done a lot, but a lot more needs to be done. In the coming months, we are hopeful of getting more and more states, onboarded with us, and we are very positive that in the coming years we will see this as a very clear example of a very successful policy.
Okay, Mr. Ahmad, you say a lot more needs to be done. Clearly, sustainability is the way to go. Everyone has to work hand in hand. Mr. Banerjee, what more can the auto industry do? In fact, the union minister himself is urging the auto manufacturers to provide some kind of rebate on the purchase of new vehicles against the scrapped vehicles. But the fact is, all of us expect the other side to walk the talk. When can we expect the auto manufacturers to come up and say, okay, we're doing this because, it requires, and it is for the larger good. It is for the larger good of the country, of the planet. We have set ambitious goals for, ourselves in meeting climate targets. And this is clearly one of the important aspects towards realizing that ambition. So what role can the auto manufacturers play, at least in this?
Well said. In recently concluded Auto Expo, if you look at the statement of the President of SIAM, our focus has been now working for the sustainable mobility advocacy. And under the sustainable mobility advocacy, there are two important pillars. One is road safety and the other one is decarbonization. And in both the pillars, you will find that scrappage, vehicle scrappage, circularity is actually very much ingrained in it. And that's the reason one of the important initiative which SIAM has undertaken, which is announced only on 16th, that is called Circularity. We have named it, that initiative, as Chakriyata. And as part of the Chakriyata, we intend to actually, secondary resource material usage is being focused upon. So therefore, from the design stage of the vehicle, you have to have a recycling content defined, that you cannot design a vehicle without having 85% of recycling content. You must have a very clear target for the reuse of the vehicles, and also whatever is left over, you must recover. So that is called RRR. That regulation has already been formulated by Minister of Road Transport. That is called Auto Industry Standards 129. And that standard defines not only the recycling and reuse and recovery of the material, but also it talks about not to use the hazardous materials which are actually not good for the environment. So it could be hexchrome, or maybe mercury or lead. So those kind of limitations have been posed on in recycling. And auto industry has taken upon itself a very sustainable way of dismantling the vehicle. We are sensitizing every constituency of this recycling business, that they are able to do things in a very environmentally benign and a very safer way, so that society is benefited, and this spurring of the manufacturing will result also in employment generation.
You're right, Mr. Banerjee. I think the bottom line here is,
Mr. Mahmood mentioned, it's a win-win situation for all of us, and we are very excited to enter into this new phase of.
You're right. The bottom line here is that it's important to adapt to this policy, but in a safer way. At the moment, as Mr. Ahmad said, it's a largely unregulated informal sector. We have to formalize it and ensure it benefits the society and benefits the environment at large. But we'll have to stop at that. We are running out of time. We'll have to wind up the program. Thank you once again to all three of you for joining us on this edition of Perspective, sharing your thoughts, your views with us and our viewers. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time. I'll see you same time tomorrow. Take good care of yourselves. Keep watching Sansad.